Today is June 26, 1989. I'm at the cottage and I'm preparing to interview Carl Diminescu, a gentleman who's had a barber shop on Warburton Avenue near Washington Avenue for many years. I'm Marion Martin. Carl, when we talked the other day, you told me a little bit about your family's background. I wonder if we could just start by you telling me where you were born and what year.
Well, I was born in Pančevo, Yugoslavia, in August 8, 1920.
And then when did you come, and tell me about your parents, what were their names?
My mother was Mela, M-E-L-A, and Dad was Trojan, T-R-O-J-A-N.
And what nationality was your mother?
He was Serbian.
And your father?
He was Romanian.
And when did you come to Hastings?
1927.
And who did you come to Hastings with then?
Well, actually, with my father. He was here already.
Did he go back to
No,
get you?
He sent for us.
And so who did you travel with?
Just my mother and my sister and just my sister, because my brother was born here.
How old was your sister and what was her name?
She's Helen. She's married.
Was she older than you?
She's a year older. She's 19.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you arrived here in 1927.
Right.
And how long had your father been here?
Oh, about 4 or 5 years, I guess. And then he sent for us.
Had he been in Hastings all that time?
Yes. Yeah.
And what was he doing here?
He opened a barber shop.
And where was
On
that?
Washington Avenue.
Which side of Washington?
On the right-hand side going down.
So it's on the north side?
Right.
What is in the location now where his barber shop was?
Gee, I really don't know.
Oh.
It's all changed, you know.
Yes. Well, you know where the bookstore is?
That's down further.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Much further.
Oh.
Right after the large house. There's an apartment house there.
On the corner?
No,
Oh.
down past. You go down the block, and there's a store there. There used to be a grocery store, which is now an office or something. Then there's a building, and the building right after it is
I
where
see.
we had the shop.
What was the grocery store that you remember that was there?
That was Mandrick's.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. So it was on the same side of the street as Mandrick's?
Right.
And just a little bit closer to Southside Avenue, or Railroad Avenue?
That's right.
Right. So you came in 1927, and you were 7 years old. Do you remember anything about that trip over and coming to Hastings?
Very rough, rough trip. And we were sick. Everybody was sick on board. And that much I remember. And we settled in Hastings.
And did your father meet you when you got off the boat?
Oh, yes. Sure. Yeah.
Did you go through Ellis Island then?
I believe so, yes.
But you don't
I'm pretty
remember
sure.
it?
I don't remember too much about it.
What's your first memory about Hastings?
Well, I guess I started going to school right away, you know. And I believe we first lived up on Washington Avenue, on top of Washington. And, what's his name?
Where Mr. Murak lives?
No, before that. Jimmy Passanella's house.
Is that closer to the aqueduct? No, it's south.
Well, it's about 3 houses down from the aqueduct.
The aqueduct.
Right. And we lived there. That's the first place that I recall. When we got here, we lived there.
You had an apartment in the house?
Yes. Well, after that, Pop bought a house down on Warburton Avenue. I believe it was 475.
When that was the second place you lived?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. The house up here on Washington, who did you say lives there now?
Jim Passanella.
Yeah, I think there's a name out in front.
Yeah,
So, that house, do you remember who else you lived with?
Well, Jimmy's family was upstairs and we were downstairs.
You were in the basement?
That's right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And they had the upper 2 floors?
Yes,
Mhm.
right.
So-
His family, his mother and father at the time, and his sisters and himself, there were quite a few of them
Mm-hmm.
at that time, yeah.
How many were in his family, do you remember?
In Jim's family,
Mm-hmm.
I think there were at least 3 or 4 girls and,
Mm-hmm.
and 1 boy.
Mm-hmm.
No, 2 boys, yeah.
Now, did your parents speak English?
My dad did pretty well, broken English. And,
Mm-hmm. Because he had come earlier.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
right. But he spoke many languages, so that really didn't matter, because over here you had everything
Yes.
and at that time.
What other languages did he speak?
Polish, Russian, Hungarian, just about anything he could understand, most languages.
Mm-hmm. And he had been able to do that when he lived in Europe?
Well, he learned that in the Army, I imagine,
Oh, I see.
during the First World War.
Uh-huh.
And,
Could your mother also speak several languages?
she could speak Hungarian
Mm-hmm.
and Serbian and broken English.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you lived in a house with an Italian family.
Well, that didn't matter,
Mm-hmm.
you know, really.
Were there other people from your home country, from the area where you were born, here in Hastings?
No, not that I remember.
Do you know what brought your father to Hastings?
Well, he had friends in Brooklyn,
Mm-hmm.
and they knew someone here, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
and they helped him out. They helped him find the Hastings, I guess,
I see. Did he learn the barber trade in
or in Europe.
Europe?
Oh, yes,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
So the first memory you have is of going to school?
Yeah, right. Well, I remember living up
Mm-hmm.
Passanella's in the winters. Boy, what winters here.
Mm-hmm.
Where we lived down the cellar,
Yes.
and when it really snowed, you couldn't open the door.
Oh,
You know,
yes.
it all used to blow right in there. I'll
Uh-huh.
never forget opening the door one time and all the snow come in.
Right. Now, was that what was called a cold water flat?
Yes,
There was no heat, no central heat.
no,
You had a stove?
oh, I imagine. I don't,
Mhm.
oh, sure, must have had a stove,
Mhm.
sure.
And how long did you live there? Do you remember how old you were when you moved?
We were there maybe 5 years, I
Mhm.
guess, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Was like 3 rooms or 4 rooms?
About 4, I guess,
Mhm.
sure.
And your brother was born there?
No,
No.
I was born on Warburton Avenue.
Mm-hmm. So where your father bought the house on Warburton Avenue, what was that address?
475,
Mm-hmm.
right up next to John's Bar there.
Is that a one-family house?
That was a rooming house at the time.
Mm-hmm. Who did he buy it from? Do you know?
No, I don't remember.
Mm-hmm. And then when you moved in, did it get...
Probably from the bank, really.
Oh.
At that time,
Uh-huh.
houses were growing cheap,
Well, let's see, that would have been about 1932
sure.
during the Depression,
Yes,
so... mhm.
right.
When you moved in, did your mother run a rooming house then?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
sure.
And tell me about your boarders.
Oh, they were nice men, that I recall.
Always just men?
Just men,
Mhm.
yes, right.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of work did they do?
Well, they, Anaconda or Zinzas, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, you know, they were all working people.
Mm-hmm. And what nationalities were they?
All kinds.
Were they?
Yeah, sure.
Uh-huh. How many boarders did you have?
I remember 3 or 4 anyway,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And for how long? You know, how many years?
Oh, a few years, maybe 4 or 5 years, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Then he finally sold that house and we moved up above where we had the shop upstairs.
Mm-hmm. And that was a rental, though, is that right?
Yes, right.
Mm-hmm. Do you know why he and your mother sold the boarding house?
Not really.
Mm-hmm.
No. I was getting too much probably for my mother.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Also, I wonder at that time, do you remember if the boarders had trouble paying the rent because the Depression was on?
I don't recall
Okay.
any trouble.
Jobs were hard to find, I think.
Oh, sure. But everyone seemed to get along.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I never heard anything.
Tell me about your earliest memories of your father's barber shop.
Well, I used to open the place up and clean up and get it ready for him in the mornings.
When you were how old did you do
I
this?
started when I was 9 years old.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And so you were still living up here, I think,
Sure.
on Washington Avenue?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And at that time, was the barber shop still on Washington Avenue when you first started helping out on Lower Washington?
No, it was up here.
Moved to its current
Yes.
location?
Right.
And that address is what on Warburton? What's the number?
485.
485 Warburton.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the year that he moved to that location?
In 29.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that was when you started helping?
Right.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
So what time did you get up in the morning to do that?
Well, I was down there by 7 in the morning and
Mm-hmm.
get everything set, and then he'd come down and I'd go to
What was the first thing you did when you got down there?
Well, sweep the floor and
Mm-hmm.
wash the spittoons, which was a terrible job at that
it?
time.
Well, oh.
you know. Wash the mirrors and clean the whole place up, really.
Uh-huh.
In the winter time, start the fire, the wood fire and the coal.
Uh-huh. There was a wood fire and a coal fire?
Well, you had to start it with the wood,
Oh.
you know.
Uh-huh.
If it had gone out during the night especially,
Mm-hmm.
we would try to bank it and keep it going overnight, but some mornings you'd come in and the thing was dead, you had to start it all over again.
Right.
So you had to clean it out and start it up.
Right. Some narrators have told us that their mothers used to go down and get the coal from the locomotive engines. The engineers would shovel off some of the half-used coal, half-burnt
Yeah,
coal.
A lot of people used to do that.
Did your mother used to get that for the
No.
barber shop?
No,
No.
not that I recall.
Mm-hmm.
Pop always managed to buy it, I guess.
Right. Yeah. So you were down there at 7,
Mm-hmm.
and you cleaned up. Tell me about the spittoons.
Oh, that's terrible. That time they all chewed tobacco and stuff, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody smoked cigars, cigarettes, whatever. They were all filthy, you know, and it had to be done every day.
Mm-hmm.
It would smell, I guess.
And you would do it in the morning,
Oh, yeah.
not at the end of the day.
No, in the
evening.
morning.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be down there in the evening.
I see. So when you started helping your father, you went in the morning, then you went to school,
Yeah.
but you didn't go back in the afternoon to help him?
Well, later on, I used to go down and let him go get lunch.
Oh, I see.
Uh-huh.
So during lunchtime?
I would
Mhm.
stay there till he came back from lunch.
Mm-hmm.
But that didn't go on too long. Then he had lunch brought in
Mm-hmm. Who brought in lunch?
from Polly's. Where the garage is now was St. Polly's Bar.
Yes.
And Cass Polly, Shorty was the cook,
Mm-hmm.
and they used to make hot dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Bring it over when it was
Mhm.
ready.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite a thing.
Before he started getting lunch from Polly's, did your mother cook a hot lunch for him?
I really don't know if it was hot or
Uh-huh.
what.
Mhm.
You know? I don't recall.
Did you used to go down and sit in the shop so he could walk home for
Yeah,
lunch?
sure.
I see. You didn't take him his lunch.
No, he
Mhm.
would go home and have lunch, and
Mm-hmm.
it would be ready, and he'd be back in 20 minutes or so.
Mm-hmm.
Then I had time to rush home and eat and get back to school.
Wow, yes.
Yeah.
Did your older brother help in the barber shop at all?
He wasn't born until...
Oh, he was younger. It was your sister who was older, Helen.
Yeah, right. She never helped out in the shop. No.
Mm-hmm.
just at home.
Mm-hmm. And your younger brother was considerably younger.
I just had the one brother, the younger brother. I
Yes.
didn't have an older brother.
Right. And your younger brother was born in what year?
He was 9 years younger than I.
Mm.
What does that make it? I'm going to be 69, so he's 58 at the
So
right
he was
now.
born in 1929.
29.
Just when you started helping in the barber shop, actually,
Right.
in the morning.
Yes.
He was born about that time.
Yeah.
Oh.
Mhm.
Well, tell me, how soon was it then when you were down at the barber shop well, first of all, when you were helping your father in the mornings before you went to school, and then you would go down at lunchtime so he could go home, did you then help him out on Saturday?
Well, Saturday was the day sifted the ashes and cleaned out the back and got all the garbage ready and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday was a big working day.
Down at at the
Sure,
barber shop?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so he'd be cutting hair and you'd be doing these other things?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Right.
How soon did you start helping him cut hair?
Well, I used to watch him, but I never did it, for a few years. And then when I was 16,
Mm-hmm.
there's a time about when I started.
Mm-hmm.
Went to barber school when I was 16. Used to get the first trolley, 6 o'clock in the morning, the number 1 trolley down to the subway, and the subway down to the Bowery, to Lancey Street.
Wow.
2-hour trip,
Mm.
and a lot of fun down there.
Did you?
Oh, yeah.
And then you'd make the trip home every night?
Oh, sure. Same thing, 2 hours back.
How long did barber school last?
I was there about 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I graduated, and I got a job, $5 a week. 6 days a week, 12 hours a day,
Wow.
down on Grand Street,
Mm-hmm.
Grand, a block away from where the school was. And, I guess I stayed there close to a year.
Did you still come home back and forth every day?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then Pop bought a barber shop for me in the city,
Mm-hmm.
82nd Street, right off 2nd Avenue, Yorkville.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful section.
Mm-hmm.
My sister was she learned to be a beautician,
Mm-hmm.
so she had the beauty shop and I had the barber shop,
Oh.
right next to each other, in the
Mhm.
same building.
Mm-hmm.
And
Did you share the same space?
No, she had her store and I had mine right
Mhm.
next door to her.
But your father set you up both up in
Right.
business?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then, about 39,
Now, how long did you do that?
well, I was in there maybe 2 years,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
till around 39.
And you were quite young.
Yeah, sure. At the time, I was 18, 19.
Mm-hmm.
And the war broke out, and my father says, well, you better come to Hastings and register for the
Mhm.
draft,
Mm-hmm.
He says he heard that I'd have a better chance to stick around longer if I did that than
Mhm.
rather than
Mm-hmm.
do it down the city.
Well, were you living in the city
I
then?
was living with my sister,
Oh, I see. You had an apartment?
no,
Er-
with her,
I
in
see.
her apartment. She
Mhm.
was married,
Mm.
and they lived on 83rd Street,
Mhm.
just a block and a half away from where we worked.
Mhm.
I had a room with them
Mm-hmm.
until I came back to Hastings,
Mm-hmm.
around 39, I guess it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed here till I went in the service.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, I have a picture at home. I have to find my father and myself and a couple other fellows when up at Ardsley Station the morning that we were leaving for the service.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd like to see
And my
that.
wife says she has it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll find it.
Mm-hmm. So then you were up in Hastings for about 2 or 3 years probably before you went in the service?
Oh, yeah, I didn't go until 42.
Mm-hmm. So where did you work up here then?
Was Dad,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
So there was enough to keep you both busy?
Oh, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, that time it was busy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 35 cents a haircut, quarter a shave.
Now,
Very busy.
is that what the price was when you came
Yeah.
up here after you finished barber school and after you had worked in the city for several years?
Right, yeah.
The price was what?
35 cents for a haircut and a quarter for a shave.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
What about earlier, when you were, what's the earliest that you remember? When you were a schoolboy and you were helping your father on Saturdays, do you remember how much he charged then?
He never charged less than that.
Oh, I see. That price
Yes, right.
stayed pretty
From
stable?
that time on, that was the lowest it ever was. Then it kept going up.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember if, like, during the Depression, when a lot of men were out of work, if your father had a hard time
Oh, sure.
keeping his business
Everyone
going?
had. Sure,
Mhm.
everybody did. I remember they put Warburton Avenue in. They ripped up, I guess that's when they took up the trolley tracks and everything. They put the new road in.
Mm-hmm.
The WPA and PWA, whatever it was.
Oh, I hadn't realized that they were part, that
Oh,
that
yeah,
was a kind of Depression
Yeah,
project or
that's... I'm
New
pretty-
Deal project.
That I remembered,
Mm-hmm.
they were working on it.
Mm-hmm.
Took a long time.
Were local people from Hastings, did they work on that job?
Not really. No. It was mostly government, like I say.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I wouldn't know, really.
But I just wondered if, from people you knew, if any of
I didn't know anyone who
your friends' fathers or something worked on it.
No, they all worked in the Anaconda or
Mm-hmm.
Census.
Mm-hmm. What was it like for you, being a part of the neighborhood, living in the neighborhood where so many people's fathers worked in the factories and your father did not? Did that make any difference?
No,
Mm-hmm.
no. Not at all.
And the fact that there weren't other people of your parents' nationality here,
Well,
did that make a difference to you?
Not really.
Mm-hmm.
We had friends in Brooklyn and in the city. We used to visit every Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
My father and mother's friends,
Mm-hmm.
from Europe,
Mhm.
that they knew there.
Mm-hmm.
And that was about it. Never had anyone here.
They didn't come and visit you here?
Oh, yes, they did, sure.
Mm-hmm.
But mostly we went there because we always had a car. My
Mhm.
father always had a car.
Really?
Always. I never recall that he didn't have one.
He must have been a very hard-working barber.
Oh, yeah, he was.
A lot of 35-cent haircuts to
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
care of his family as well as he did and buy a car. And,
Yeah, he always had a car.
What was the first kind?
I think it was a Ford,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a two-door with a rumble seat. And in the summer, we used to go to Jones Beach,
Mm-hmm.
and my sister and I would ride in the rumble seat, and friends, and one or two that we could take with us.
Mm-hmm.
That was great going down, but coming back, it would cool off and get cold. We used to
Oh.
freeze back there.
Yeah.
We'd slide under and close the, close the top down.
Oh.
Oh, that was a lot of fun.
Now, when you used to help your father on Saturdays when you were still in school, tell me what it was like in the barber shop. Like, were there many men in there sitting around, talking,
Sure.
waiting their turn?
Oh, yes. In
Uh-huh.
those days, even much more than today.
Mm-hmm.
Today, it's in and out, and, hurry up. In those days, they'd come in, they would sit down and wait. They want to kill an hour or 2 hours. They had nowhere else to go anyway,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot different,
Mm-hmm.
a lot more pleasant. there was not too much rush at the time, you know.
Your father had how many barber chairs?
Well, at one time he had 3 barbers working for him.
We did.
Oh, yes.
Now, was this before you started working?
Oh, yes.
Before you started cutting hair?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, this little after he moved up here.
Mm-hmm. So in the very late 1920s, early,
30s,
even the 30s during the
in
Depression, he had 3
yes.
barbers working
yes.
for him.
Sure.
Hmm.
Those days people got a haircut for maybe once a week, a trim.
Mm-hmm.
Those, you know, most people did work. It wasn't, not that I don't remember anybody starving. You hear stories, you know, but we all ate fairly well, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't seem to me to be that tough, you know, it was tough, I guess, if you compare it to today.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone got along very well.
Mm-hmm. Did men come in as frequently for a shave
Always.
as for a haircut, or more often?
More often. They didn't shave themselves.
They didn't.
You didn't have the safety razor.
Mm-hmm.
And that made it real tough. That's why he had the helpers, because everybody would get shaved.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a tough part of the barber business. Cutting the hair is no problem.
Mm-hmm.
Keeping a razor sharp is.
I see. And that was what you learned at barber school, also the
Well,
shaving?
my dad taught me most of it. I just went down there for the practice.
Mm-hmm.
I had just for the experience.
Mm-hmm. How long did you continue giving shaves at the shop?
Well, up until I went into service.
Mm-hmm. And then when you came back from the
42.
service?
Then I didn't work for a while. Then I got married,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to go to work.
I see.
I went with Pop.
Okay. And what year was that?
Let's see, I was 27,
1947?
47.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when you went back in 1947, did people no longer come in for shaves?
Oh, sure.
Oh, they did?
Oh, yeah. I still have shaves now.
Oh, that's what I was trying to find out. You
Sure.
do really?
Oh, yeah. There are a lot of barbers don't shave anymore.
I didn't know anybody did. That's
Yeah,
very interesting.
I do.
Uh-huh.
I have 3 or 4 fellas who I shave twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of fellas who never shaved themselves, really. They wouldn't know how.
Hmm.
They could always afford it, and even today, I get $6 for a shave.
Hmm.
That's a lot of money. you know?
Yes.
And you get, every once in a while, you get a young fella come in and he wants to splurge, give me a shave, you know. You don't care what it costs, and they love it.
Hmm. Well, I guess all that kind of lather and...
Yeah, right.
Do you still put the hot towels
No,
on?
well, that's out.
Mm-hmm.
We used to do shampoos and massages and all that. Not anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Since the war, all that is out.
Oh,
Just
really?
haircuts and shaves,
Mm-hmm.
period.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the stylists, they do all that now.
Mm-hmm.
They can have it.
So you remember lots of men sitting around and, as you said, killing an hour or two?
Oh, sure.
Now, you said your father had 3 barbers working for him. Did that mean that there were 4 barber
Yeah,
chairs
right.
in the store?
Yes.
Now you have 3, is that right?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
right.
And then, like, how many chairs would be there for men to sit in?
Where it's blocked off right now, it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
A big mirror wasn't there then.
Mm-hmm.
The shop went all the way back.
Mhm.
Actually, there was 5 chairs in the place.
There were 5 barber chairs.
And the fixtures were on this side,
Mm-hmm.
on the north side.
Oh.
And then I don't know, the government come out with, the Board of Health come out with, you had to have this, have to have it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So he had to get rid of all his fixtures, and he bought these.
Oh.
And they were 3 chairs and the 3 mirrors and all that. He brought it down the city, and we moved it in and set it up
Mm-hmm.
and put it on the south side.
I see. So those are not the original mirrors and
No, they're
marble fixtures, because they look pretty old.
They are old.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was back in the 40s, in the early 40s, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Just before I went into service.
Mm-hmm. And then what did he do with the 5 old chairs?
I threw them away.
Do you have any pictures of the shop from the days when it had the 5 chairs along the north wall?
I doubt it. I doubt it very much.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think I have a picture of the place as it is now.
Oh.
I've never taken pictures of the shop.
We'll have to go down and take a picture of it for sure for the files. Because, I mean, now, as it looks now, it looks like it's, been there in that way for a long time.
Sure.
But its present appearance dates from the 1940s.
Oh, before that, sure.
Mm-hmm.
The present place, yeah. As it is right now, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So about how many men do you think might have been in there at a time?
At one time?
On a Saturday? Mm-hmm.
Oh, you'd have 8, 9 fellows in there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The shoe shine chair, you get a shine.
Oh, there was a shoe shine.
The chair is still there.
Oh.
Yeah.
Was there a separate person who was employed to do that?
I was one of them.
Okay.
I shined shoes when I was a boy there.
Uh-huh.
Sure.
Were they always young boys who did the shining?
Usually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And could you do that during the week too? I mean, or
Just
wouldn't
weekends.
the boys be in school?
Weekends.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Saturday,
Mm-hmm.
Sunday morning. Sunday morning, everybody got a shine. It was only a nickel.
Oh, and the shop being open on Sunday morning for shoe shines?
Yeah, well, Pop used to open Sunday morning.
For shaves and haircuts?
Just for mostly shaves.
Mm-hmm.
For a couple hours every Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to shine the shoes at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was quite a while ago too, yeah.
Do you remember doing that after you came up from New York in the early 40s or 1939?
No, not at that time.
You didn't open on Sunday?
Not at all, no.
Mm-hmm.
This was back in the early 30s,
Mm-hmm.
during the Depression.
Mm-hmm.
Then they came out with the safety razors and
Mm-hmm.
men were shaving themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God.
Were there any other barber shops in this area besides your father's?
There was a shop where my dad left. Another man, a
Mm-hmm.
Russian man, opened up there later.
Do you know what his name was?
We used to call him Harry. Harry Rabushka. Yeah, that's what his name was, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's long since dead. And we had he and Mr. DiCarlo was a barber. He worked for my father.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had a little shop of his own, but not in a store, in his apartment.
Mm-hmm. After he stopped working for your father?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Where did he live?
Up the street, where the garage is, that big building there.
Which
On
garage?
Warburton Avenue.
Mm-hmm. The garage where pulleys used to be?
Yes,
Mhm.
right. Up the street from where Polo used to be.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have to pay rent. He paid rent for the apartment anyway, so
Mm-hmm.
made a living, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Plus you had about 3-4 shops across the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Main Street, Spring Street, and Warburton Avenue.
So there were 5 barber shops
Oh,
at
yes.
least, and then the man who did it in his apartment.
Yeah, right.
Hmm. Did your father complain at all about competition?
No.
Mm-hmm.
No, he was one of the best. He was a master. You know, when you learned over there,
Mm-hmm.
he started over there when he was, I guess, 9 or 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You go right on up the line. That's the way I learned, but I don't consider myself half as good as he was.
Maybe you're being modest.
I do all right, but he was a master.
Mm-hmm. Well, did you first start cutting with him,
Yeah,
teaching you, and then you went to barber shop just to
Right.
have experience
sure.
with other people?
I used to just stand there and watch him.
Mm-hmm.
And we picked up how he did it, and he showed me how to hold the scissors and all. And then I used to, he'd be cutting hair, and the man would want to, he'd finish, and the guy wanted to shave. I would lather him up well, and I would, on the next chair, I would get the other man ready for the haircut, and I'd come over and lather this man up. By then the other man was ready. I'd go over there and shave him around the ears, clean him up, get the next fellow ready. By then Pop was finished. I'd go lather him up, or we'd work back and forth.
Now, how old were you when you were doing that?
Probably about 14, 15 when I started that.
And you liked it?
Not really.
Okay.
I didn't want to be a barber. But,
What did you want to be?
I didn't know, really. Not a barber.
What was it about being a barber that you
Too
didn't
many
want?
hours. 7 days a week, you know. They used to open Sunday morning even. Well, even when I worked with them, we'd work 6 days a week. And it was 12 hours a day. And usually more than 12. You know.
Really? Now, you would go down when you were young, 9, 10, 11 years old and older. You went down at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
and got the shop ready. What time did he come down and actually start working?
By 8 o'clock.
And then did he work through till 8 in the evening?
Sure.
Oh, he didn't close like at 5:30 or 5 o'clock or something?
No, never. 8 o'clock at that time was the hour. 8
What-
to 8.
What did he do about dinner or supper?
He'd eat when he got home. Late.
Did he have his big meal at noontime?
Not really.
No, he ate his big meal at 8 o'clock.
Yes, right.
Well, those were long hours.
Oh, sure.
But while you were in school, you didn't help in the evening.
No, not really. I'd sweep the floor if it needed, you know, if he didn't have time to sweep the floor when he was working alone. Whatever help he needed that I could do, I did. You know.
Well, did your father say that you had to go to barber school?
No, not really. He wanted me to, but I was against it for a while, and I realized that I was having a tough time in school, and I may as well go. And after the 9th grade, finished 9th grade in class of 39, and that's one thing I'm sorry about. I didn't graduate with my class. You know, I know all the fellas. There's still a few of us around. And went to barber school, but I guess it was all for the best as it worked out.
Were there many other of your classmates who also left after 9th grade?
No, most of them went through.
They did.
They graduated. Well, they ended up in the Anaconda. So and a few of them are still around.
When you were first working at the barber shop, do you remember what else was, what was next door? What was on the corner here, the northwest corner of Washington and Warburton?
Aside from Paulie's.
Yeah,
Not counting Paul, not counting.
across the street, where the delicatessen is now.
That used to be a hardware store.
Oh.
Mrs. Mittendorf, they owned the building. She had the hardware store. They lived upstairs. And Mrs. Walker lived above them. And I forget the people on this side, what their name was. I know it, I can't think of it. And we lived upstairs, above them.
You were on the 3rd floor? Or the 4th floor, really?
Second, really. Well, 2 flights up.
Oh. Were you on the 1st floor right above the stores?
No, the next.
No, the next one.
Right, the top floor.
And how many apartments were on each floor?
2.
2.
Yeah, 2 on each side.
Right, and when you moved there, those were still cold water flats, weren't
sure.
they?
Oh, yeah. What a cold place that was.
Was it? Well, the wind.
We're right on the river, sure. Yeah, you only had the coal stove in the kitchen, the kitchen was right there by closest to the river.
Oh, it was. The kitchen was
Right.
facing the river.
Facing west. That was the first room. You walked in the house, right into the kitchen. And then it was 4 more rooms. 5 rooms altogether, I guess.
Were they kind of like one after another?
Railroad.
You walked through one to another?
Right.
Uh-huh.
And in the middle room, we had a little boiler stove. Later on, when oil became popular for heat, in the wintertime, my mother used to close off the 2 front rooms because they were just ice cold, you know.
You mean the ones furthest away from the stove in the kitchen?
That's right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And how long did your family live there?
Oh, we were there 8 years, I guess, something like that.
So were your parents there when you went in the service?
Oh, no. No, they had, Papa bought another house down on Warburton Avenue, 156. That's quite a ways down.
Was that a one-family house?
No, he hadn't bought that house yet. He moved to Uniontown,
Oh.
up in Sunita's house on Brand Street. That's where I left in 42 to go to the service.
I see.
We were living up there then.
Uh-huh.
And it was during that time that Pop bought the house. After that, down at Warburton Avenue.
Did he used to walk up to, no, I guess he drove his car
No, he had
up to
the car.
Uniontown.
No, he always had the car.
Right. But that was a real change to leave this neighborhood, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, that was heat up there, so I guess that's why they went up there.
That was what? You mean it was a warmer place?
The heated apartment.
Uh-huh. Oh, it was not a house on Brand. You moved into an apartment?
It was a 2-family house.
I see.
And we had the upstairs and the owners had it downstairs. But you had heat.
I see. And that was a big reason.
Hot water, yeah, sure. You didn't find that everywhere, you know?
Right.
At the time.
Over here in the Mittendorf's building, there were 2 apartments to a floor, and did the 2 families share a bathroom in the hall?
No, we had our own bathroom.
Oh, you did?
But no bathtub.
Right, just the
Just
junk. But each apartment had its own bathroom?
Yes, yeah. Later on, they enlarged it and made larger bathrooms.
Where'd you used to take your bath?
In the wash tub in the kitchen.
Do you know anybody who has one of those wash tubs?
Gee, I don't know. I doubt it.
We're trying to find one, but...
Yeah. Many people, that's where everybody washed in those days. Sure.
When did you do that?
Saturday. Saturday night, that was bath night. Yeah.
Did your family used to belong to, or go to things down at Cigaretski's?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
What else did you do when you were growing up?
Well, I played the accordion. And I played in many places.
Where did you learn to play the accordion?
I went to school for it. I took lessons.
In Hastings?
No, down the city. I used to go down once a week. Petro Dero school, accordion school.
You and your sister?
No, I went alone.
Just yourself?
She took dancing lessons in Yonkers. And I did too after that. And we tap dance, and I played the accordion. And, yeah, we had a lot of fun.
This was something that you particularly wanted to do?
Well, my father wanted us. He wanted me to be more of a musician, but he saw that I wasn't for it. I really wasn't that interested in it. So that's when he says, well, you better be a barber then, you know? He said, I spend enough money buying you the accordions and paying for the lessons, and you don't want to practice.
And the car fare to the lessons and everything?
Of course, sure.
Was your sister, did she like the dancing?
Oh, she loved it. Yeah.
Were you unusual in that, in taking the music lessons and the dancing lessons, unusual among your friends?
Well, there was 1 or 2 other boys who, this Kapura boy, he played the accordion. He was very good.
Did he go to the same teacher that you went to?
No, he had a Russian teacher. And he used to come to their house.
Mm-hmm.
But poor Benny, he died many years ago. He was real good. He
Mhm.
could have been a musician.
Mm-hmm.
He was really into it, you know.
Mm-hmm. And you said you used to play at affairs?
Oh, sure.
Parties and things? What kinds
Oh.
of affairs?
Catholic Church over in St. Matthew's, the old, we'd be there at least once a month.
Mm-hmm.
Dances and the Lyceum in Hastings, and
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of affairs.
Mm-hmm.
At the theater,
At the old Hastings Theater?
Sure.
Uh-huh.
We used to have the amateur nights and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We appeared there. And in Dobbs Ferry, the Embassy, Yonkers, the theaters.
How old were you when you were doing this?
13, 14.
Mm-hmm.
And from 12 years, from 11 years old up to about 14, 15.
And then you stopped?
Yeah. Well, I didn't really stop, but I didn't want it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Well, about then you started going to barber school,
Yes.
right? And,
And I just dropped it.
mm-hmm. Did your younger brother play the accordion or a musical
no
instrument?
one else. I taught my sister how to play.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't play anymore.
Did you have a piano at home?
No.
Mm-hmm. Carl, when you were growing up, did your parents speak English at home to you, or what language did you speak at home?
Serbian,
Mm-hmm.
mostly.
Mm-hmm.
Because my mother had a hard time learning, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Used to have a lot of fun with the onions she used to call Indians, you know, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was hard for her to. And Pop, of course, he spoke with all these languages, and he killed the English language too, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you ever heard the old timers speak. They all had their own language.
Mm-hmm.
But you understood them.
Now, I think you told me the other day that your mother did not work outside the home.
No, she never did.
Mm-hmm. What did you do, kind of, when she wasn't working at home, when she wasn't taking care of you and...
She cooked. She used to cook cakes and cookies and
Mm-hmm.
do the housework. Well, then Pop bought the house down at 156 Warburton.
When it was a rooming house?
No, that was the second house.
Oh,
That was
okay.
One
Mhm.
family, big family, one family house.
Oh,
And when I came back from the service, they were living down there.
I see. So he bought that in the 40s.
Yes, the middle 40s.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then did they just stay there?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Then my mother had a stroke, and she was paralyzed. In 1950, Pop says, well, let's go to Florida. Maybe the weather will help her there.
Mm-hmm.
They moved down to Miami, and that's when I took the shop over.
In 19...
50.
Mm-hmm. I asked you the other day if you thought that there were, if things had changed very much in the neighborhood and in the people who come into your shop. And what would you say to that today? What kind of changes?
It's all, well, of course, they're all different people.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the old timers are gone. I have a lot of new people.
Mm-hmm.
But all in all, people are people, you know. There isn't that much of a change. Not that I notice.
Do you still draw primarily from this neighborhood?
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Was that always the way it was, actually? I mean, do you have many people come down from Uniontown to your shop?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
I have them coming from all over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. People who don't mind waiting for a while, you know. If I have 2 or 3 waiting, someone who isn't in a hurry will come in and sit down and wait. But most people don't want to wait. I don't blame them. I don't like to wait either, you know.
Now, are you the only real barber in Hastings now?
Yes, right now.
And the last one,
It's Joe Manzi
yes,
on
and
Main Street,
right, he's been closed a good 10 years, hasn't he, or more?
around that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there had just been the 2 of you.
It's not 10 years, closer to 5 or 6.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then Before Mr. Manzi, while he was open, what was the other barber shop?
The other one was on Spring Street. Herman Eggering had that shop. And he got sick, he passed away, and that closed.
Was that the shop that Mr. Boulanger?
That's right, Mr. Bollinger.
Bollinger,
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
And he had owned it.
He owned it, and Herman worked for him, and when Mr. Bollinger became mayor, and he was mayor while he still had the shop.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Sure. And he retired, and he sold the shop to Herman.
Had Mr. Bollinger grown up in Hastings?
I don't think so.
Oh.
He came over from Europe, from Hungary, I think.
And was there a Mr. Steikert or something? Somebody whose name started with an S? That name's not familiar.
No. There was Jake the barber.
Now, who was Jake the barber?
Jake, you know where the bank is, the savings and loan.
Yes. Astoria Federal Savings and Loan?
Right. Well, they took that shop over. He had a little barber shop in there. Jake the barber.
Oh.
Jake, what's his last name? I can't think of it. Only the old timers remember Jake.
And then there was an Italian family that had a barber shop.
Yes,
Cardacci? Did he or?
well, he was one of the last ones. Not Cardacci. Frank, he cuts my hair and I cut his.
Oh,
He's retired
still?
now. Yeah, right.
And does he come into your shop to cut your
He was in
hair?
last week. I call him and tell him, come on, Frank, come in tomorrow after 1 and we get our hair cut. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Does he live in Irvington?
No, he's lives over here in Hastings.
And he used to have a barber shop.
He had one, yes, across the bridge.
How old is he now?
Frank's 74, I guess. He's retired.
Would you ask him if he has any old pictures of the barber shop?
Sure,
Or any old memorabilia from it?
sure.
You can't think of his last name?
I will.
Okay. I don't know if that's somebody that someone else has talked to or not.
I don't know. Cocciardi. C-O-C-I-A-R-D-I.
Oh,
Cocciardi.
is his wife's name Lucy?
Lucy?
All right. I didn't
Right.
know Frank had been a barber.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Frank's been in the business longer than I was.
I see.
Sure.
Oh, well, we published a picture of his wife's family in our Hastings Historian.
Yeah.
Picture-
Caruso.
Yes, when she was a little girl, and
Right.
the picture shows her parents, too.
Yeah.
Gosh. Did your brother or sister ever think about working on the waterfront?
In which way?
Well, working for Anaconda or working for Zinsser Chemical?
Oh, no.
Your brother never applied for a job down there or
No,
anything?
No.
When you were growing up and living over the barber shop here in the Mittendorf building, you said the other families were, the Walters lived above you? Walker.
Next to us.
Who were they?
Oh, Mrs. Walker just passed away.
Really?
She had been up there for 70 years, I think.
Wow. Does she have children in town?
No, they all moved out. She had a daughter, Phyllis. She used to live in Dobbs Ferry, but they moved a couple of years ago. Up the line somewhere.
How long ago did Mrs. Walker die?
About a year ago, year and a half, tops. Oh, about a year, I guess. That's
And she had
about
lived there 70 years.
At least.
That's too bad we never talked to her.
Yeah, she was a wonderful woman.
And did her husband work in the waterfront?
No, he worked down the city. He passed away many years ago. She had the boy and the girl, Phyllis and George, the son. She brought both of them up. And they both got married, and she lived upstairs by herself all these years.
And who else was in the building?
Well, then Sophie Mittendorf was below her. She owned the building. And on the other side of
What nationality was she?
Mittendorfs were Hungarian.
Do they still
I
have,
mean, German.
do they still have family in town?
Yeah, there's, Richie lives in Dobbs Ferry.
Mm-hmm.
Richie Mittendorf, and there's John Mittendorf, also a son.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, he bought a house somewhere, I don't know where he lives.
Mm-hmm.
And Sophie passed away, her husband passed away. Although there's a Horrocks, they're not Mittendorfs. Sophie Mittendorf, that's her maiden name.
Uh-huh.
She married George the Horrock.
Oh.
So Sophie's a Horrock. I say Mittendorf because I was talking about her mother.
Right. But her daughter lives in Hastings and is Mrs. George Sahurak.
She lived here all her life, yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay. No one in the building worked down at the waterfront? Doesn't sound like it.
No. No. There's a Horrock, John Zahorak, Sophie's husband,
Mm-hmm.
his sister,
Mm-hmm.
no, his brother family lives next door. That's
Next
George
door?
Zahorak,
Right.
above the barber shop.
Oh, in the same building, isn't
Yeah,
it?
right.
I see.
That was George Zahorak. He just passed away
Oh.
less than a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
Ann Zahorak still lives there with her son.
Mm-hmm. How old is Ann Zahorak?
Oh, man, he's got to be up there, around 60, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And the Mittendorfs had a hardware store.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
right. Mr. Middendorf was a painter,
Mm-hmm.
and he had a stroke, and Mrs. Middendorf used to run the hardware store.
I didn't know that there was another hardware store. I mean, I knew about the hardware store that was owned by a German family on Main Street. Now,
Yeah.
what was the name of that? That was a wonderful hardware store.
I know, I can't think of the name.
Okay.
I remember it very well.
But the Mittendorfs also had a hardware store at the
Oh,
same time.
sure. Oh, yes.
Hmm.
Before them.
Well, now the other family started about 1905 or 1910 or something.
Yeah, well,
You think
about
the
same
Mittendorfs
time.
were early
no,
too?
I don't, not that early.
Not that early,
No.
but early.
No.
Uh-huh. Excuse me just a moment.
Sure.
And then your barber shop was just north of the hardware store.
Right.
And then what was north of you, of the barber shop?
It was a bakery,
Hmm.
Peel's Bakery,
How do you spell Peels?
Piels.
Uh-huh.
They were there for years.
What nationality were the Peels?
They were Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
And after that it became a candy store,
Mm-hmm.
and then it became an apartment, which it is now.
Mm-hmm. And then further north of Peels?
Well, that's the next building. That
Mm-hmm.
where Peel's was is the next building
Right.
to us.
Yes. And who owned that building? Do you know? Do you remember?
Not at that time. I think Peel's owned the building at the time when he was there.
Mm-hmm.
When he sold it, and this Russian lady owns it now.
Mm-hmm.
Kazima, her name is. Yeah. And the next building is where the bar is.
Mm-hmm. That's where Time Out is?
Yeah. That was always a bar, I think.
Uh-huh.
It seems to me.
Mhm.
It was a speakeasy in the beginning. St. Pauli had the speakeasy there.
Oh, Mr. Poli, you also had Poli's
Well,
tap.
after he left there, then he opened up on the corner.
Oh, his first place
There was a
was,
speakeasy
Oh.
before, what do you call it? You weren't supposed to...
Prohibition.
Prohibition.
Right.
After Prohibition, then he opened up the bar.
the big place on the southwest corner of Warburton and
Yes.
Washington.
Right.
Oh, I didn't know that he started in a small speakeasy, so it was just a little bit south of the bridge.
No, just south,
south of the
Not a
bridge?
little bit, yeah, it's south of the bridge, about the middle of the block.
Okay, on the west side of the street.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Then you had...
He was Hungarian, wasn't he?
No, they were
Poli?
Polish.
Oh, the Polish were Polish?
I
Uh-huh.
believe so.
Okay.
Then you had Mr. Rubin.
Mm-hmm.
He had a dry goods store.
Mm-hmm.
He was Jewish. Next door was the Chinaman Laundry, Charlie. Boy, this goes back years.
Mm-hmm.
And next door, and then by that time you were up to the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And right next to the bridge there was a shoe store
Mm-hmm.
many years ago. Cats and Jammer we used to call him. So his name was something like that. But the
Uh-huh.
Cats and Jammer twins in the
Right.
movie, in the Funnies.
Uh-huh.
And after that it became, there was a restaurant there. I think the restaurant...
Still south of the bridge?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
where the shoe store was. It was a restaurant first, then the shoe store. When the restaurant closed, the shoe store, and then after the shoe store was a butcher shop. And after the butcher shop, the deli, with that delicatessen there for years.
Hmm.
And now it's an apartment.
Mm-hmm. So there was a busy little block
Oh,
of
yes.
stores there.
Yes.
Much busier than today.
Oh, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, today, what do you have? You have the
The delicatessen on the corner,
deli,
and then the
myself,
podiatrist.
That's all, the podiatrist, and the little shop next door. It's more of an office or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm. Well, in the old days, did you also have a sense of many more people living in this neighborhood?
It seems so.
I mean, the buildings had more people living in them, do you think? More children, certainly.
Oh, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
More families,
Right.
and now that a lot of the people are older,
Yeah,
or
right.
else they're single people or couples if they're
Right.
younger.
Sure, yes. Families were larger, in
Mhm.
those days than what they are now.
Mm-hmm. And tell me, go down Washington Avenue then, from the corner. What do you remember being on the north side of Washington Avenue?
Well,
Lower Washington, south of,
Well, you had
west of Warburton.
You had the Hungarian club, you had the Portuguese club,
Hmm.
you had a bar, Lesko's bar,
Mm-hmm.
and down a little ways down near the corner, right from the corner up was another bar. Yeah, I can't think of the name. Selzda.
Selsda, right.
Selzda.
Bar.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And then across the street from
Across the street on the corner was
Selsda's.
Pupko's bar.
Uh-huh.
Up above that was Susie's bar. Oh no, it wasn't Susie's yet, it was someone else, I don't remember the name.
Mm-hmm.
But right there, in that little area, you had 4 bars
Mm-hmm.
and two clubs, which catered to drinking.
Mhm.
This was a drinking town
Right.
in those days.
Do you remember that a lot? I mean, did men come in the barber shop?
Oh, sure, tipsy, sure.
Mhm.
It was a lot of fun. I mean, nobody fought, everybody laughed. We had a lot of fun in those days.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was happy. You didn't have much, but it was very nice.
Mm-hmm.
And when you come up the hill from the second bar up, there was a grocery store there, Kalina's,
Mm-hmm.
grocery and butcher shop.
Mm-hmm.
And Mandrick's, that's right, I forgot to say Mandrick's.
Right. They were across the street
Butcher
from
shop.
Kalina's?
They were up the street,
Mm-hmm.
around the corner from us,
Mm-hmm. On the north side of the street?
right
Mm-hmm.
on Washington Avenue, the first building.
Mm-hmm.
That's also the property that my landlord owns
Yes.
that. That's where Mandrick used to be.
I see.
Mr. Mandrick opened there years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and his son Bill
Mm-hmm.
took it over when he passed away,
Mm-hmm.
and he moved up when Mrs. Middendorf closed the hardware store. Bill moved up, it's over 25 years he was up here.
And then he closed about
he
4 years ago or
He
something?
retired, no, 3 years ago.
3 years ago?
It would be 3 years now. I guess it is 3 years, yeah. He was retired for a year and he passed away. So he'll be dead 2 years now, I think. 2 or 3. Gee, time goes so fast, it's hard.
Yeah.
He was my buddy, and I can't remember. Well,
And then on the other side of the street, Sigaritsky's Hall.
oh yeah, I passed that. Sigaritsky's was right after the bar. And then came the
Kalinas?
Salinas, right, that's up to the corner.
The corner of Ridge Street
Ridge
and
Street.
Washington.
Right. Well, the house is right there on Ridge Street. They owned all that property. That's the original Sigaritsky's.
Right.
And then up the hill, you had Polly's. And around the corner, you had the diner. There was a diner there.
Yes, I've seen pictures of that. What
Yeah.
family owned that?
Oh, there were 3 owners. The original owner was Booth, Artie Booth's father. Then this guy Joe, I don't remember his last name, Father Joe, a Polish fellow. He had it for quite a while. No, he had it last. Yeah, right. Joe Babuda had it. Then he sold it to the Polish fellow, right. He was there quite a while, and he had to get out. And when he sold, when Polly was there, that was a big house there.
Yes, it was a beautiful big house.
Apartment house.
And the Polies owned the whole building, didn't they?
No, they rented.
Oh,
No, they rented.
who owned that big building?
Gee, I know the name. It's a funny name. I know it, and I can't think of it. I was just trying to think of it.
Oh, they just rented their restaurant bar space.
That's right, yeah. And there was quite a few apartments there. Yeah. It was all cold water in the beginning, then they put the steam in, as they did in our building.
Right. Do you remember what year your building was converted to steam heat? It was after you moved to Brant Street, right?
Oh, it was after the war. It was in the 50s, I would say. Yeah. Middle 50s. Yeah.
And the building where your shop is now owned by Mr. Kirkcher,
Right.
right? Did your father try to buy that building
Many times.
from Mrs. Mittendorf?
Sure. Many people tried, but they would never sell. Yeah.
I'd asked you if you could think of any persons who used to come into the barber shop who were just kind of characters or who represented like just a certain type of person in Hastings. Did anybody come to mind?
Well, we had so many characters.
I bet. Everybody probably.
Just about everybody is their own character, you know.
Yep.
They were all drinkers, and you had a couple in them. Why, everybody was full of fun, and just about everybody, you know. It was hard to pinpoint.
Yeah.
Everyone seemed the same. Everyone was happy and carefree, and
Well, weren't there some customers that your father didn't like?
I really don't know.
Or actually, I suppose if there were, they went to another barber.
That's all. Right. Worked both ways, you know. I'm sure a lot of men don't care for me. I don't. I like everyone. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, everyone is fine. You
Yeah.
know.
Now, when you came back from the war, you didn't work for a while, but then in 1947, you joined your father.
Right.
And were you like partners then, or
No,
you
just-
worked for him?
Right.
And how long did you continue working for him?
Till 1950,
Just 3 years,
when
yeah.
he retired,
Okay.
and I took the shop over.
When you and he were together from 47 to 50, did you have other barbers working there?
No, just he and I.
And then after 1950, did you ever need another barber?
Oh yes, I had a barber weekends. for many years.
Mm-hmm.
We're very busy.
Mm-hmm.
But as the price kept going up higher, their pay was higher, and in the long run, I was doing all the work, and the helper was sitting there, and
Right.
he was making more than I, and
Yeah.
I did all the work, so I finally says, that's it. And that's 10, 12 years ago I quit getting help. I just work by myself. Better off. really.
But the business has kept you busy.
Oh, yes. Especially with all the other shops closing, one after the other. And I'm the only barber left. And they all tell me, hey, don't you close.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
don't dare
Uh-huh.
retire. Or, I tell them, no,
Do you think about retiring?
not at all.
Good.
I love being here.
Do you close the shop for vacation sometimes?
My wife as well, I used to close. Close a week or 2 weeks. Sure.
Now, so you've actually then, the shop has been in your family since,
Since 27.
65 years. Well, your father started it earlier though, right?
Well, yes,
1924?
sure, about that. Yeah,
So for 65 years.
yes,
What is it called now? Is it called Carl's?
Carl's.
What was it called when your father had it?
Trojans.
I see. And when did you change the name?
Well, after my father retired, I had to change it, and I had it on a window, but one of the kids broke the window, and I says, well, it cost me $100 to get lettering put on it. I says, they know me,
Right.
they know the shop is here,
Right.
you don't need the,
So you've been Carl's Barber Shop since 1950.
right,
And then from 1924 to 1950 it was Trojans, your
Right.
father's.
yes,
Wow.
yeah.
I just wanted to ask you if you have any customers now that you've had for 40 years or so.
Oh, sure, many of them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Who are some of your longest time customers?
I almost could say 3/4 of them. It's hard to name every one, you know? From father to son to their son, generations, really. You know, 2, 3 generations.
What are some families that you've had 3 generations?
Oh, let me see. You know, it's so hard to...
I know, because you call everybody by their first name,
Yeah,
but
right.
can you think of any last names?
Offhand, it's so hard to
I know.
think back. Like you say, I know more by their first name. Half of them I forget their last names.
Sure,
Now
why
I
would you
even-
remember?
Now I even forget their first names.
But when you came back from the war, how much did a haircut cost then?
$50.
Because it had been 35 cents
Yeah.
and a shave 25 up until
Right.
the war.
50 and 35 then. Then it
Okay, in
kept going.
1947, 50 and 35.
Yeah.
And then when you took over the shop from your father in 1950.
75 and 35.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then from there on, each year we would go up a dime or 15 cents or whatever we could get, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We all used to get together, and because everything else kept going up,
Right.
we had to keep pace, you know.
Did you and the other barbers used to get together and figure
always.
out what?
They always used to come to me. Joe Nancy,
Nancy?
he was the spokesman mostly. He was a union man. And I wasn't union because I was not a workman at the time. I was an owner. So now he's an owner, and Herman was the owner. And
Oh,
there's,
what was Herman's name?
Eggering.
Oh, you know what I'm thinking of? Mr. Manzi actually worked for somebody else, didn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Was
Yeah.
that a German man?
German, right.
Hmm.
Yeah, I know him very well. I forget, I can't...
And that man left Mr. Manzi the business.
Right, yes, yeah.
So it went up a dime or so each year?
Yes.
And what does a haircut cost now?
$7.
And a shave is?
6.
And you still do shaves for how many people?
Well, I do a dozen shaves a week at least. I don't want any more, really.
Right.
Just keep my hand in, that's all. Right.
Now those dozen shaves, that's not for a dozen different people though.
Well, say it's for 7 or 8 different people. Yeah.
Mostly older men?
Yes.
Men in their 70s or some of them younger?
Well, a lot of them are young. The studies are the older people. Then, as I say, you get younger people. Have a lark, they want to try it out.
See what it feels like?
Yeah. Right.
When did you discontinue using those, like, they used to have...
Hot towels.
Yes, yeah.
That was right after the war. All of that went out.
Why do you suppose that was?
People didn't go for it anymore. And, you know, everything was getting more expensive, and that was all extra, you know. And things weren't that easy during the 50s. And they were lucky they could pay for a haircut, never mind the other stuff, you know. They were all working people. Probably other shops in better areas, richer areas, they still do it probably.
Oh, do they? I don't know.
Oh, yeah. There are a few shops, I imagine, that still have that.
Who used to wash and dry all those towels?
Well, we had the laundry. See, now we use paper towels. Those days you had the cloth towels and your, what they call them?
Laundry service? Or...
Yeah, well, you had the laundry service.
Was it Charles who was down the street from you?
No. He was just for shirts and stuff.
I see.
Well, the laundry service was just for the barbers, really, because they couldn't use those towels in any other, in a restaurant or anything. There'd be hair on them, you know. No matter how good they cleaned them, there were always a little hair on the towels.
Yes.
And they became too expensive with the unions and all. You used to have to pay for 100 towels a week, and even if you use only 10,
I see.
you still had to pay for 100, and that's every week.
Right.
I said, no way, and then they come out with the paper towels, and let's save this.
Yeah. The barbers who worked for you, were they union barbers?
Not really. I used to call an agency in New York, and they'd send a man down.
And then I just had one question back about your mother's boarding house. Were the men who were boarders, did some of them come from the old country where your parents came from?
No.
No.
No, not that I...
They weren't like connections from the friends in Brooklyn and things like that?
No, there were people from around here.
They just arrived
around here. Yeah.
Were there any families who boarded with you?
No.
No.
Just
single men?
Yeah.
Do you remember what they paid a week?
No, not really.